Every year I take my mother on a trip to celebrate her birthday, always someplace new and exotic. This year we chose Namibia and South Africa, two countries with an abundance of open space and wildlife. We would travel on a transect north to south with the richest diversity of tortoises anywhere on the planet. We left on January 12, 2010 and traveled halfway around the world with a miserable layover in Brussels.
How's it going?
This is probably the longest trip I've ever taken. New York, Brussels, Frankfurt, Johannesburg, Namibia. I think it's taking us about 40 hours to get to where we want to get to. Anyway, our team included, of course, my mother, an accomplished naturalist and botanist, who turned 80 along the way. My sister Jennifer, a sociologist and humanitarian. Her 14-year-old son Ethan, a backup cinematographer equipped with his flip camera. My partner Maurice, chief cinematographer, still photographer, car mechanic, and biologist. And lastly, my girlfriend Mie, key field researcher and animal tracker. Our tour guide and fellow tortoise expert was Alfred Schleicher. Namibia is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world, with only 1.8 million people occupying over 800,000 square kilometers. It is also the first country in the world to include protection of the environment and wildlife in its constitution. Much of the country is protected in parks and reserves. In recent years, ecotourism has flourished, with people traveling mostly from Europe to visit eco-resorts, game reserves, and like us, to go on safaris. We arrived during the summer rainy season when the tortoises would be most active. The rains had started a few weeks earlier and the landscape was green and lush compared to what the last 5 months had been. Recent fires had taken their toll, leaving tortoise casualties in their wake. The area was overgrazed by free-range horses and cattle. There were minefields of cow dung, but one creature was positively thriving. Dung beetles were everywhere. Like many earth movers, they were making quick work out of the scat-covered landscape.
And this is actual tortoise shit.
Yep.
But tortoises seemed to elude us. The next morning, we woke up early and started the search. Mostly, we saw signs of tortoise predators, baboons, jackals, and birds of prey, and the burrows of honey badgers and bat-eared foxes. We searched for over an hour and didn't find a single tortoise. What we didn't have trouble finding was a variety of deadly creatures. Puff adders were thermoregulating in the early morning sun.
Okay, Maurice, be careful. Just be careful, dude. Okay, that's enough.
And centipedes and scorpions who were a little too common for comfort.
Oh, he's on the camera. Wait, he's on the camera, in the front of the camera. He's okay.
Oh. Put the rock down.
Jesus. Okay, what? That's cool.
Finally, we found the first of 5 leopard tortoises. Most were feeding on tender annuals and grasses.
Here, try to get him, wrangle him so your feet aren't in the picture too, Maurice. You're not doing a very good job wrangling. You're in the frame, dude. You gotta go to your right. You're not doing a good job wrangling.
This is our first day on this trip, and we're looking for Samobates oculiferus, and we seem to only be finding leopard tortoises. Apparently, you find 50 to 100 leopard tortoises before you find a Samobates. By day's end, the only sign of a serrated tortoise, or Kalahari tent tortoise, was the carcass of an old male that seemed to have been eaten by one of the many predators in the area. We just found this carcass, and they are quite difficult to find. We've been looking all day for this tortoise, and hopefully we find a live one.
What did you catch, Maurice?
Little baby.
Wait, don't put your...
Cute.
Let me see.
If you look behind me here, all the little heads of turtles are sticking up all over, and they're everywhere. I mean, you can see 100 turtles out there right now. They stink though. Wish we can get that on cam.
Okay. Wait, oh yeah. Sorry. Oh shit.
The extremely secretive nature and small size of this tortoise made them very difficult to find. If there was ever an ideal time to search for these tortoises, it was now. It was the perfect time of year and the perfect time of day.
Oh my God.
So we just found our first serrated tortoise, a species that was just almost impossible for us to find. It just blends into the landscape in a way that's just unbelievably camouflaged. Unlike the other forms of Samabetes, this tortoise survives on a much wider variety of plants, feeding on annuals, herbs, and grasses. Samabetes means sand. This tortoise almost always is found on red, sandy soil, and there are large areas that do not have the red sand, and this tortoise is void of that region. This species has a huge inland range in the Kalahari, which extends through eastern Namibia, Botswana, and northern South Africa. Before heading south through the Kalahari Desert, we stopped off at Alfred's home to observe many species he was breeding from both Namibia and South Africa. His collection included serrated tortoises, 2 species of tent tortoises, parrot-beaked tortoises, angulated tortoises, leopard tortoises, namapadlopers, and the striking Okavango mud turtle. His enclosures were beautifully maintained, and his husbandry practices were ideal for keeping all the different regional species. Because most of the year these tortoises only have access to dry plants in the wild, Alfred never offers them drinking water. Instead, they obtain all the necessary moisture from the many native plants that they feed on within the enclosures, and he uses a drying rack to dehydrate the greens naturally. We were impressed with his extensive knowledge and natural methods of husbandry. We left Alfred's home and Windhoek behind and headed south through the Kalahari Desert.
Ethan, what is it?
Smelly ass turtle.
This guy's probably been sleeping for 8 or 9 months. They surface and find the little bit of water available. It's just an incredible turtle. This is the lungfish of turtles. This is the turtle that can survive a nuclear blast, I think. They smell unbelievably pungent no matter where you get them, and foul. So no one's gonna eat them, no one wants to eat them. It's a survivor and it's here to stay. Herds of oryx were trying to navigate the endless miles of fencing. Namibian and South African landowners are required by law to completely fence their property to prevent nomadic tribes from settling and to keep out the unwanted predators. Larger predators like baboons, jackals, and caracals are tirelessly persecuted, in some cases to the point of extinction.
Close the doors. Eric, close the door. Eric, close the door. Watch out!
My mother and sister stayed inside the Land Rover and looked up the Cape Cobra in one of our guidebooks. They were shocked by the extreme toxicity of the venom.
Eric, you're way too close.
We finally arrived at the remote 12,000-acre Tiras mountain ranch run by two Namibian Germans, Peter and Anita Koch. The ranch stands at an elevation of 1,400 meters and is situated between the Royand Escarpment and the southeastern foothills of the Tiras Mountains. Tiras is a cattle ranch that is occasionally offered to guests as a bed and breakfast. The beautiful yet simple bungalows run on solar power and are perched along the side of the rocky hills, offering spectacular views of the vast surrounding savannas. On our first morning, Anita took us on a tour of the property and showed us many of the rock formations and botanical curiosities on her land.
This is a toilet paper plant, but here it has got small leaves. You get them with really big leaves.
And they get even softer.
Yeah,
And why is it called toilet paper plant, please?
This habitat is classified as part of the Karu, better known as Bushman land, a region that experiences mostly summer rains and very occasional winter frost and even snow. The annual rainfall can be very unpredictable from year to year, supporting only a few species of plants. The landscape is almost entirely an open savanna of Bushmanland bunchgrass, but features two very specific ecological niches, rocky outcroppings and dry washes, and it's primarily within these two niches that the tortoises can survive. By 9 a.m., the temperature was already above 80 Fahrenheit, and the humidity was very low. Tortoises proved extremely hard to find. Only a few basking rock agamas were spotted, one of the few creatures active in the blistering midday heat and sitting on rocks that were over 130 degrees Fahrenheit. What kind of chameleon?
It's a Namakwa chameleon.
A Namakwa chameleon.
Camellia namakwensis.
Chameleon namakwensis.
It speaks namakwensis. It says, "Put me down, please."
Oh, I'm sorry.
Look at its feet. I know.
Okay, I'm torturing this guy.
Be out on a tree. You don't
Chameleon.
Think he'd be
Oh, you
out
put him
on
down,
the
it's better.
grassland like this.
I'll let him go. The temperature was only getting hotter, and the chances of finding a tortoise in this heat were increasingly unlikely. My mother sought out the only shady spot under the only tree in sight to rest. Sitting right beside her was the first tortoise spotted.
Wow, they're really camouflage.
Yeah, they are.
A beautiful adult male resting in the shade. With renewed encouragement, Maurice found a second animal.
So this is my first Bushman land tent tortoise, Samobates tentorius voroxi. It's really hot. The sun is really intense, so I guess they're going under rocks to just seek some shade. You can see there's a little depression, and it looks like it's a spot where she's hid before or other tortoises have been.
I would not have found this tortoise had it not been for a blue-headed rock agama that ran into this bush, and I was looking for the agama, and in the middle of this very, very thorny bush, this female was resting from the heat of the day. They're more or less in these islands of habitat, these sort of ecological niches that can support tortoises. And then there's vast areas with no tortoises, and you'll find an area within this grassland that has some bushes where the tortoises can survive, or there'll be rocky outcrops where these tortoises can go. So they're very similar to a homopus, yet they're a tent tortoise. One of the very interesting things about this tortoise is that it almost never drinks standing water. There's some areas where these tortoises have been known to go to a watering hole when there's a rare rain and water actually will collect, and the tortoises will drink, and they'll actually kill themselves by doing that. So it can just take the tiniest amount of moisture out of the little bit of plant life that's here. Just a really fantastic tortoise in a totally severe landscape. Alfred is working on the genetics of this northern form of bushmanland tent tortoise, which is morphologically distinct from the southern populations. Population densities of this tortoise are known to be extremely low. The 6 of us searched for over 5 hours, and in all, only 3 tortoises were found. With Alfred's help, Peter and Anita have only marked 37 individual animals over the last few decades. Should I put it back under the bush? We drove 65 kilometers south to the town of Aus. We immediately went out searching for the Nama padloper, Homopus solus, in its very restricted range in the escarpment mountains near Aus. This extremely rare species was described in 2007 by Branch. Its name solus comes from the Latin word for lonely and is endemic to Namibia. The Nama padloper is a rock-dwelling species that inhabits granite outcroppings. They are most active during the winter rains, but even at that time of year, they are extremely difficult to find.
Oh, wow. Oh, here we go. Wow. Another Samobades.
After almost 2 hours of searching, we still hadn't found a single padloper. But we did find 3 adult female and 1 juvenile bushmanland tent tortoise. These tent tortoises, as well as the habitat we found them in, were very different in appearance from the tortoises we had found in the north. There can be considerable variability within one subspecies, but evidence suggests that the northern form of Samobades tentorius varoxi, with its lower, smoother, rust-colored carapace, is possibly a different tortoise than the rest of the population. Beautifully marked as these tortoises are, they are incredibly camouflaged. When just sitting under a bush, they're hard to spot. We had all but given up the search for the Nama padloper, with the exception of Maurice and Alfred. Amazingly, Maurice found a fresh and perfectly preserved adult female Homopus solus carcass under a granite ledge.
They normally shelter in these rocky outcrops behind me and stay there sometimes for a couple of months without moving around. That makes it extremely difficult to spot them. So we were very lucky this morning to get a shell of it.
One nearby rancher had never seen a single tortoise in his 70 years working on the land.
You must be really lucky to find one.
We checked into our hotel, the Klein Aus Vista, that had amazing bungalows built into the sides of the massive boulders. The bungalows were constructed out of salvaged material from old railroad tracks. We took in the spectacular sunset and fell asleep to the sound of geckos. The next morning, we sent Maurice out to collect some eggs for breakfast.
You gotta get the hand, dude.
Okay, hold on.
Get my hand.
Okay, now I got you.
Ow, ow, ow.
One of our last stops in Namibia was to meet up with Leopard Gessert, a businessman who had accumulated ranch land that he hopes to turn into a massive game park. He has already assembled 200,000 hectares. Lotar's property borders the Spiergebiet, an enormous tract of diamond mining land. For over a century, it was one of the most heavily guarded pieces of land on Earth. He is effectively creating one of the largest continuous tracts of protected land anywhere in the world, and is waging a campaign to remove all the old ranch fencing since it interferes with wildlife migration. He has already removed over 500 miles of fencing. His land supports a number of endangered plants and animal species, and the oryx, ostrich, springbok, and even mountain zebra populations have already begun to rebound. We crossed the Orange River into South Africa, a country twice the size of Texas with a population of almost 50 million people. This region is dominated by dwarf succulents and was magnificent even though the flowers are much more abundant in spring. After a few hours of searching, I found the first of 3 tent tortoises deep inside a meerkat burrow. All 3 were females, all avoiding the midday sun.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful tortoise. Oh my God, this is our first Samobaides tentorius trimeni, and it's a female.
What's incredible to note while I'm standing here, and you could probably hear it on the audio, is the wind noise. There's a tremendous amount of wind that comes off the ocean. The ocean is very cold here, which creates fog that keeps these succulents alive and keeps these tortoises alive.
Unlike most deserts, the succulent Karu has an incredible array of plants with over 6,000 species. It is a winter rainfall desert with a low but very reliable annual precipitation. This consistent rainfall supports the unbelievable botanical diversity, along with the most beautiful of all tent tortoises. Thrilled with our good fortune, we drove on through the succulent Karu and stayed the night in the town of Springbok. This area is best known for its spectacular wildflower displays in the spring. We noticed tracks, but no tortoises, and proceeded to search under bushes until I was nearly struck by a camouflaged many-horned adder. I've been bitten by venomous snakes in the past, and yet still couldn't resist picking up this one for Alfred to get a better shot. The venom of this species is potent, but the yields are minute, so this snake generally doesn't pose a serious threat to humans. The first sign of tortoises were the carcasses we found, wedged deep in between the rocks, apparent victims of flooding.
I think maybe in the winter when the silt builds up, the earth builds up around them and they can't get out and die within these crevices.
Encouraged, we kept searching, and finally found 4 angulated tortoises hiding in rock crevices. So we just found our first Chercina angulata, or bowsprit tortoise, or angulated tortoise.
This is a monotypic genus. It does resemble or remind me of marginated tortoises in southern Greece, both in habitat and in the way these guys live. So it's sort of a classic case of convergent evolution. They're also much more of a generalist than many of the more niche-specific tortoise species in South Africa and Namibia, like the tent tortoises or the homopus. These tortoises are able to live in very different ecosystems with different topography, different plant life. It has the widest range of
probably any of the South African tortoises. They're by far the most common tortoise. The densities can get extremely high. And it gets right up to the coastline. It needs to get this fog layer that comes. All right, it's too early in the morning. I just got nailed by mosquitoes all night last night, and to be honest, it's a struggle to pick up this camera and take footage every time we want to do something. We miss so much wildlife.
It's out of focus.
I'm screaming at Maurice to get the camera. We've recently broken our tripod, so probably most of the footage now is going to be rocky. We just placed the camera as I talk to it on this rock, and it's sort of balancing back and forth. So we really need someone to document these trips other than us, who don't know really the first thing about the equipment we're using. We spent the rest of our day searching for the speckled padloper, looking among the rocky outcroppings and hills surrounding the town of Springbok. This tortoise is known to be quite common in this part of their range, but the very dry, hot summer conditions were not helping us. For the first time since this trip had begun, we failed to find our tortoise, or any evidence that this creature even existed here. Interestingly, the Homopus signatus maintained at our center in Southern California were collected in 2001 from this exact campsite outside Springbok. It's a rock-dwelling tortoise that is one of the smallest tortoises in the world. This and Homopus solus are probably the two smallest tortoises in the world. This is a very, very large female, and this is a large male. This is a tortoise that can get preyed on by raptors and varanids and other creatures quite easily. So they tend to stay fairly close to these rocky crevices. This morph has a tan or light-colored shell with extensive black splashes, and the carpe scutes are generally raised with sunken centers, differing from the southern form, which usually has a dark orange or red shell with fine black spots and a smoother carapace. Amazingly, the following day outside of Calvinia, we found a pair of Homopus signatus kafer. This species of Homopus signatus kafer, is one of the most difficult tortoises to find in the wild. This is the subspecies which is more endangered than probably any other Homopus because it lives closer to civilization, closer to where agriculture is taking place. From Springbok to Calvinia was a day's drive, and angulated tortoise sightings were becoming more frequent, even at speeds of 70 miles per hour. These tortoises were by far the most commonly found throughout the Southern Cape. They occur in many different habitats, from coastal islands to inland deserts. By the close of our trip, we found over 40 angulated tortoises in a variety of different sizes and colors. Tired of spotting tortoises, we all fell asleep to the purr of the engine.
It's leaking here too.
You gotta put some gas down.
Dude, would you get out of my sun, please?
Oh, shit, sorry. That's a pedophile joke.
Not leaking this time.
Way to go, Maurice. Once again, Maurice's handiwork got us to the next town where there was an open shop and diner. By this time, we were thirsty, hot, and tired, and in need of a good laugh. The diner was exactly what the doctor ordered, fittingly called We Love Cats. Cats were displayed in every imaginable way. Cat placemats, cat magazines, cat portraits. There was even a cat purring in a box. The lunch ended on a more serious note when Ethan discussed the recent taxonomic changes of a few extinct dinosaurs.
It's a lesbian dinosaur.
What's a lesbian dinosaur?
A liccolotopus.
A liccolotopus?
And then a gay dinosaur is a megasaurus.
The streets of Calvinia were deserted, reminiscent of a ghost town. The Calvinists, like the Boers, were a racist group of farmers and ranchers who fled religious persecution in Europe. It was said that all they needed was a rifle, Bible, and a tent. The Boers and Calvinists are something between the Amish and Mormons in their way of life. Saturdays and Sundays are reserved for praying and nothing else. We checked into a very unusual B&B. The place was an 1850s Victorian home that was a little on the creepy side. We ate an unusual dinner of wildebeest and wild boar terrine in a very macabre dining room and went to sleep in our creaky canopy beds under the watchful gaze of all our little friends. Over lunch, we celebrated my mother's 80th birthday with tea and a lovely cake adorned with a tortoise that the innkeepers had thoughtfully placed on top. The one thing that was abundantly clear to us at this point was that the people of Namibia and South Africa can be a bit eccentric. You have to be a bit of an outsider to colonize a foreign, barren land like this. But who was I to talk? It dawned on me that I was similarly afflicted with my own obsession, not with cats or dolls, but with hard-shelled creatures, traveling halfway around the world to seek them out. Suddenly I realized that I fit right in. It seemed that almost every home we visited had a small collection of tortoise shells on display. Tortoises were not only collected by the white population, but were also eaten opportunistically by the remaining Bushmen and the poorer populations. Historically, they were even traded as currency. By law, all tortoises are protected in South Africa and Namibia, but obviously many are still sold as keepsakes to tourists. Even the general store at our hotel was selling baby angulated tortoises. We drove to the outskirts of town, past the surrounding sheep ranches and the Hantam Range and Rubuni Mountains. We began our search and quickly found a number of Karu girdle-tailed lizards. These are just a neat lizard that flatten out like a pancake. Just a really cool lizard. The first tortoises spotted were all angulated tortoises. Not a single tent tortoise was seen. The area was heavily fenced to keep the sheep and goats in and the jackals out. Adult tortoises were unable to pass through this fencing and were occasionally trapped. Finally, Jennifer found the first southern tent tortoise hiding under a bush. Jennifer, explain how you found it.
I was just looking to see if I spotted anything moving, and then I just looked in that bush, and it was in the bush. The end.
Eventually, we found 5 more tent tortoises, 1 male and 4 females. We're really excited because this was the last species of all 3 subspecies that we had yet to find in the wild. Understanding the tent tortoise complex is confusing. The range of the tent tortoise is more or less contiguous, where different subspecies may overlap and intermediate forms can occur. Descriptions can be very inconsistent. Tent tortoises show complex geographic variations and were taxonomically confusing for decades. Some taxonomists suggest that the group should simply be considered a single species, while others have suggested as many as 30 subspecies. 3 subspecies generally are recognized today, and work is being done on classifying a potential 4th form. We headed south through the beautiful Swartzberg Pass in the Black Mountain Reserve with amazing succulent and rock formations. We spotted a deadly boomslang which we stopped to remove from the road, and then a large leopard tortoise which we saved from passing cars. At dusk, we arrived at the Grandfontaine retreat and were shocked to find that it had nearly burnt to the ground from a huge wildfire. Much of the landscape was still smoking, and everything was burnt as far as the eye could see. The retreat is a Victorian farmhouse built in 1910, set in the beautiful Grandfontaine Valley Conservancy. As usual, Maurice, Alfred, and I went out looking for leopard tortoises, dead or alive. In the streams and marshes, we saw a few helmeted turtles, but even some helmeted turtles had succumbed to the fire, since many were still estivating under the leaf litter. The devastation from the fire was even more severe than we realized the night before. It was hard to imagine that any tortoise had made it through alive. We found only burnt and rotting carcasses. Thousands of tortoises must have died in this blaze. Remarkably, we found a large male wandering across the charred land. We were looking for the South African form of leopard tortoise, Stigmocheles pardalis pardalis. What do you think, Mie? This doesn't have sound, right, this thing?
It does.
It does?
What do you think? It's from 1984?
By the day's end, we found a total of 6 live leopard tortoises. They were all black, with flaring rear marginals, and looked very different than the tortoises we had found in Namibia. Leopard tortoise now is one of the most widespread tortoises in the world, ranging all the way from Ethiopia down to South Africa. For some reason, the animals to the far north and the animals to the far south retain a very large size. The animals that are in the middle in Kenya and Tanzania tend to be a smaller animal. The taxonomy of this tortoise is in need of extensive scientific review, and currently 2 subspecies are recognized. As I set up a group shot of our team holding our finds, I placed the camera on the broken tripod next to the small pool. And the rest is history. We relied on Mie's backup camera for the rest of the trip. We started our long drive to Cape Town. We drove all day, mostly through wheat fields and vineyards. Agriculture has heavily impacted the tortoise populations, with vineyards increasing in popularity and wiping out the coastal fynbos ecosystem. The fynbos is remarkable for its 9,000 species of plants, making it one of the world's most diverse botanical areas. South Africa's coastline is one of the most scenic drives in the world, and the fynbos habitat still supports a wide variety of wildlife. Put it up to your face a little more. Right. What kind is it?
Focus.
I'm trying to get a shot of it when you're like moving.
The last one.
Wait.
Tell me when.
Okay.
I'd like to let him go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great. Great,
said
Maurice.
yeah.
As we approach the suburbs of Cape Town and the increased traffic, we pass numerous signs warning drivers to beware of tortoises. Sadly, tortoise casualties were very common on the busy highways. Some we had to put out of their misery, and others, like this female leopard tortoise, were filled with eggs, which we buried on the side of the road. A few we managed to save and place far from the roadways. South Africa is the most industrialized country on the continent, and the only one that uses nuclear power. Cape Town is situated at the base of the iconic Table Mountain. The city and the surrounding coastline is one of the most breathtaking settings on Earth. There are still populations of penguins along the coast and offshore islands. Cape Town is known as the Mother City and was coined the Rainbow Nation by Desmond Tutu because of its incredible diversity. This is evident in its people, customs, even its architecture. In the Islamic part of town, the houses are painted in bright pastels. It's impossible to tell this story without mentioning South Africa's political history and its current social and economic challenges. With all of its natural resources and developments as a modern nation, South Africa is still struggling to emerge from its dark past. The future of South Africa and its natural heritage will depend on the success and stability of its people. We met up with one of my very old friends, Josie Bahrain, at her home in Camps Bay. Josie has been working to improve many of these social injustices for years, volunteering in local townships, setting up community stores where people can sell handicrafts. She took us on a tour of the townships, and we saw firsthand what life there was like. She introduced us to a woman running an orphanage for children whose parents died of AIDS. Josie is trying to educate the township's children about many social issues, including HIV, teenage pregnancy, drugs, and crime. The challenges of poverty and social inequality go hand in hand with the challenges of environmental protection. On the last day of our trip, we were invited to visit the private Elandsburg Farm Reserve, one of the last remaining habitats of the critically endangered geometric tortoise. We drove an hour and a half north from Cape Town through the wheat fields and vineyards, where this species had once thrived. Over 97% of its former habitat has been lost to agriculture and urban development. The 6,000-hectare wheat and sheep farm is reinventing itself as an eco-resort, reintroducing formerly native species. On the ranch, these geometric tortoises inhabit only a small strip of intact Rhinosterveld fynbos, which only remains today because it was unsuitable for agriculture. This reserve supports both geometric tortoises and the more commonly seen parrotbeak tortoise. We looked for over 4 hours with no sightings of a geometric tortoise. Finally, when we were almost ready to give up hope, Mie found a beautiful male parrotbeak tortoise deep under a bush. Although not a geometric tortoise, we were still excited to see a new species alive. And we tried to film and photograph our prize.
Oh my God.
This was difficult since it moved like a wind-up toy and was not cooperating for the camera.
Oh my God.
That's why they're called a roadwalker. Current population estimates on the preserve are thought to be declining. The worldwide population is possibly down to 3,000 animals. We were particularly disappointed since our friend Peter Pritchard and his group had just found 2 geometric tortoises in the same location a few weeks earlier. This amazing trip was coming to a close. At last count, we found over 70 chelonians in the wild, representing 10 different species and subspecies. I hope that both Namibia and South Africa continue to protect their natural heritage going forward, as they have in the past. There's no doubt that the vast, undisturbed open spaces still remaining in both countries have protected these beautiful and fragile creatures. And we can only hope that this land remains untouched and protected for centuries to come.
Dinayo